Hi there. Nothing like a bog off to start the afternoon anyway. Here we go. Am I in this circle? Okay. Who do you think turned this into this? Was it architects, professional builders, designers, Mick Knowles even? Actually, it was these young people. A group of 14 and 15-year-olds excluded from mainstream school in East Hull and in Care. They designed it with our social enterprise over 3 months and built it in a week. We're going to take you on a short journey to explain how we came to enable young people to do this and why we think you too should champion putting this level of trust in young people.
Hi, my name is Fiona MacDonald. When I was at university, I suffered from anorexia. On my 21st birthday, when many young people are portrayed to be having the time of their lives, I had to drop out of my architecture placement year and was back home living with my parents. How had this happened? There are many complex reasons, of course, but also some simple ones. I'd had a loving childhood, but I had grown up with the strong belief that I must always do what I should do rather than necessarily what I wanted. And so now at 21, I didn't really know who I was or what I wanted to do with my life. I was painfully underweight, actually to the point of being on heart attack watch, and quietly wanted to disappear. Several crucial things happened that year. Firstly, I didn't have a heart attack. I was fortunate to receive incredible counselling from the NHS, and together with phenomenal support from family and friends, I learnt not only how to eat again, but also to find my voice. But the most profound thing that happened for me that year was that I started volunteering at an after-school club for children. I thought I had nothing to offer the world in that state, but actually the skills I'd learned at architecture school and my ongoing passion for art and design were valuable to those young people, and every day at 3:30 there'd be a gathering of them wanting my support to bring to life the latest thing they were imagining, whether it was a game or a present for a friend. I went back to university and I finished my architecture degree, and was fortunate enough to actually receive several awards, but I never forgot the joy that I felt working with children. So on graduating, I wanted to support other young people who might be struggling to find their place in the world and to bring this newfound passion for learning into my work. I went on to establish the National Schools and Young People's Programme for the Royal Institute of British Architects, and alongside my work with Matt and Fiona, I'm Head of Learning at the Design Museum, where I'm proud that every day our programmes inspire children and adults through creativity and design.
Hi, I'm Matt Springett. I come from a family whose parents were first in their families to enter higher education. My parents completely changed their life outcomes through the creative education that they had. My state schooling was good and exceptional from an art and design perspective, but I struggled with many academic subjects. While never being formally diagnosed in the 70s when I was a child, like many creatives, I'm almost certainly dyslexic. I remember the moment on a beach, aged 13, when I decided I wanted to become an architect. I'd been inspired by friends of my parents who were architects, and at the time it seemed the form of creative expression that could most profoundly be experienced by others. Really sadly, my career advisor closed down that ambition, that opportunity, because my maths and physics were below standard as he saw it. And sadly, it's this misconception and this idea that you need to be great at maths and physics to become an architect or even enter architecture education that continues and persists to this day. So I went to art school, but very quickly realized that I was no fine artist. However, an inspired tutor saw my potential to collaboratively and creatively problem solve and helped me with my successful application to the Mackintosh School of Architecture and then on to the Bartlett School of Architecture in UCL. I've subsequently gone on to run a successful award-winning architectural practice and split my time between that and teaching undergraduate architecture now back at the Bartlett, and conceiving public artworks with my collaborator Rhys Cannon, and perhaps most profoundly and importantly, in the recent years, my time at Matt and Fiona. In parallel to this, much of my outlook on lifelong learning and the empowerment of young people came from the work that I did in Canada in my early years in a summer camp where I was privileged to go. And while this was not a creative space, it was a world in which young people were given the skills to become strong citizens and trusted thinkers fully capable of contributing to their lived outcomes as equal to adults.
Fast forward several years, and we were fortunate that our paths crossed. I was looking after the education projects at Open City, the architecture charity, and Matt was one of the very generous architects who volunteered his time to take architecture into schools. Here clearly was someone who shared my passion for working with young people, but also had a very healthy ability and appetite to break the rules for the sake of the bigger picture. And he would regularly turn briefs for desktop model making on their head, and instead enable pupils to completely transform their classrooms. Here I recognised a kindred spirit and someone who has continued to surprise and inspire me. I ultimately, I went back to study my master's, but we kept in touch. And it was during this time that we had key experiences that crystallised emerging thinking that we were having.
Always tricky as a double act. In 2012, I went to the US to work with an amazing organisation called BEAM. Each year, BEAM allow a creative practitioner, or give them the opportunity to bring a project to life that they could not do so alone. Amazingly, they entrust 8 to 16-year-olds from a range of backgrounds to deliver that project. And they do that through empowering young people with skills, training, and critically trust. And in our case, we created this Navigating Dreams, a land-based nautical installation that brought the magical realism of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's story, Life is Like Water, to life.
At the same time, my master's took me to Japan in 2013, a couple of years post-tsunami. There I met local architects from an organisation called Hope, who were striving to involve children in the decision-making about rebuilding post-tsunami. Together we trialled methods of collaborative mapping, drawing, and large-scale model making. Years later, I'm still struck that it was these children who were the clearest and bravest thinkers about rebuilding post-tsunami. Children's ability to speak truth to power makes them very powerful.
We never set out with the intention to set up an organisation, but we were very keen to test the ideas of whether children could design, brief, and build their own spaces, particularly in the UK. And in the summer of 2016, the team at Sutton House, a National Trust property in Hackney, East London, put their faith in our idea. Not only did they give us space to test it, but they also, crucially, lent us their insurance. Together, with some intensive crowdfunding, we launched Build. And with a group of 12, 6 to 14-year-olds, we designed this new arrival and performance space for the property in just 1 week.
A year later, we were approached to work with the young people in Hull as part of Hull City of Culture by their visionary head of learning, Ian Reid, who wanted to meaningfully reach every young person in the city. This is the design that those young people came up with. And they went on to win several awards. They won People's Choice Award at the Architects Journal Small Projects Awards, and they were shortlisted for the inaugural Design Architecture Awards. Now, these are accolades that many professional architects dream of. And yet here are a group of young people who weren't on track to get their GCSEs and who had essentially been marginalised. Now think, how many other young people aged just 14 are being written off because they don't fit the narrow mould that our society sets for them? I don't know about you, but I find that infuriating and heartbreaking.
Evidence backs our observations. In the UK, our education system in many cases not only promotes a relatively narrow set of subjects, particularly later on in your years at school, but an even narrower set of learning modes. It favours the oral and visual over the kinesthetic and haptic, and this unfairly devalues so many multi-skilled young people.
Creative education is also on the demise, as I'm sure many of us are aware. There was a 37% drop in art and design GCSE entries and a 67% drop in design and technology GCSE entries between 2010 and 2020. Not only does that undermine their value in school, but perhaps more significantly, it undermines their value in society at large.
We think we're in real danger of art and design falling into the realm of paid-for extracurricular activity for many young people. And there will be a growing opportunity gap between the richest and poorest in our society.
Turning to our built environment, how many young people do you think look around them and feel that they've had a say in what they see. A recent UK survey found that 89% of children and young people have never been asked what they think about the places where they live, work and play. And our own countless conversations mirror this.
At the same time, it's predicted by 2050 that 70% of us will be living in urban areas, and as such, we will be more greatly impacted by the quality and relevance of how those spaces in which we live, work and play are all designed. Too often, professional designers misunderstand the need and lived experience of those for whom they are designing.
We see this time and time again in our own projects, and we're constantly reminded to remain humble and to listen. If we take one example in Hull, we had assumed that the young people might want something with a recycled aesthetic, given the building was to be on an allotment. How wrong we could be. These young people had never had a space of their own, let alone designed one, and in their words, it had to be slick and cool. This is the design they came up with, bold, innovative, and something of which they're rightly proud.
Another example was the Mega Maker Lab, when supporting 100 primary school to make London's first child-centred makerspace and learning lab with the Institute of Imagination. We had assumed that children would want a linear experience travelling through that lab. Again, we were wrong. They in fact wanted to pick and choose which spaces they went to and to cross-pollinate the testing and making ideas that they were generating. Now, these changes that come about only come about because of the engaged co-design process that we work so hard to maintain and curate.
So what is Build? Our idea is simple and predicated on the principle of trust. We give young people the agency and tools to set the brief, design, and directly build their own full-scale spaces and places. In just 6 years, and with Matt and I only able to work on this 1 or 2 days a week alongside our other commitments, and now with a small and brilliant team, we have enabled children to create 20 such full-scale buildings and have worked with over 3,000 young people.
This journey continues to enlighten us and demonstrate why that trust and empowerment is so important. Unencumbered by dogma and social preconceptions, we find that young people, through their lived experience, are often the most imaginative, progressive, and pragmatic designers. Whether or not they go on to built environment professions, and that's never been our intention, young people who work with us are left with an analytical eye, an informed opinion, and a very confident voice, and this makes them powerful future citizens. Build, therefore, is much about what is gained and revealed through that process as it is about the built outcome, as we'll now show.
In this project, we were supporting Year 6 at Lansbury Lawrence Primary School to create their own art room. The girl you see here drilling was particularly shy, yet during the course of the project, she became a true leader in her class and was teaching all of her peers how to use rivet guns and drills, having discovered a previously unknown predilection for using her hands and for making. Her and her classmates created a prototype of their design, which was displayed in the Whitechapel Gallery and went on to be viewed by 100,000 people.
These young people are all young carers who have huge responsibilities for others. Creating space for themselves in Kendall's Abbott Hall Gallery, part of Lakeland Arts, was a moment of respite and a reminder that while they are very giving in their home lives, their own personal ideas and aspirations were important too.
We've spoken how marginalised young people feel from shaping the built environment. Now imagine you're a non-verbal young person. This playground structure was created by children with autism at Phoenix School in Bow, many of whom are highly sensory and non-verbal. It's well known that there's often a drop-off in learning and confidence between primary and secondary school and the transition there. The change in scale in the built environment and the sort of social constructs of the school are one of the biggest contributing factors to this. This project with Turner Contemporary showed Year 7s across Thanet in Kent at first hand how they could take ownership of their school environment and make it better suit their needs. Our work has now grown into 3 main areas: build, learn and connect. We will always undertake the builds. Each one, as you can imagine, is a true adventure and a test of what is possible, and they're the ambassadors for what we do. Learn is the mode by which we share what we do with others to extend reach, with teachers, educators, and youth workers, the principle of train the trainer and each one teach one. And Connect aims to influence the key decision makers who shape our built environment and to bring young people's voices to the table.
Again, the evidence seems to suggest that these methods of creative engagement are working. The Cultural Learning Alliance has identified that students from low socioeconomic backgrounds who engage in arts at school are 20% more likely to vote as young adults. We also look to Finland for another alternative where architecture has been on the national curriculum since 1998. Finland recognises that without the skills and language and repository of experience, young people will become adults who are less able to participate in the discussions around the formation of their and design of their cities, neighbourhoods and buildings.
We are living in increasingly uncertain and volatile times. And if you were to believe the widespread media attention, then young people are more anxious and less resilient than ever. And yet it's these young people who are speaking truth to power and who are shaping and framing the decisions that we all will inevitably need to make for social and environmental justice. If you take the recent COP26 event, it was young people's voices, not politicians, who were most keenly heard. We now need to empower them to make that change.
You can all make a difference in your own ways, and we've seen lots of amazing examples of that today. We want to encourage you to advocate for this kind of trust in young people in everything that they do. If you like what we're doing, we'd encourage you to get involved, to volunteer and to support, or perhaps just come along to Kew Gardens in the coming year where we've just started this amazing co-design journey to make a new treehouse in the gardens. And if not with us, with a handful of other organisations and many more that we've seen today, across the UK are doing their best to empower the next generation to ensure everyone feels their ideas are valued.
Let's support all those future Connors and Dans and the others here to shape their and our worlds for the better.
Thank you.
Thank you.